You're watching Al Jazeera. We're bringing you live coverage of a statement that's being made by the Iranian Foreign Minister following a succession of attacks from both Israel and Iran against targets in each other's country. Let's listen in.
Of a nuclear weapon, we believe so. It is our firm conviction not to possess a nuclear weapon. Yet those who are willing to deprive Iran from their right, from our right to possess a nuclear program for peaceful purposes, they have no right to do so. That's why we were engaged in rounds of negotiations with the United States of America. The sixth round of talks were supposed to be held in Oman, and we were prepared to provide the necessary assurances to the Americans. In the previous round of talks, the Americans presented a number of proposals which was not totally acceptable to us. We presented our response and our viewpoints, and we were supposed to present a counter-proposal on tomorrow's meeting. Our proposal could have opened doors for an all-out agreement with the Americans. This is a crystal clear matter. The Zionist entity is not willing to see us reaching an agreement or a diplomatic solution with the United States. That's why they initiated their belligerent offensive on Iran. As the negotiations on the nuclear dossier were going on, this is a living proof that the Zionist entity is against and opposed to any form of agreement we might reach with the Americans. If you recall, the same had occurred in the past. The Israeli Zionist entity carried out many assassinations in an attempt to undermine the ongoing negotiations. I recall very clearly in 2024, as we were negotiating the revival of nuclear file in Vienna, the Israelis initiated an attack on our enrichment facilities in Natanz. The power generator in this facility, together with a number of centrifusion devices, were destroyed. It was a difficult moment. It was the aim and design of the Zionist entity to undermine and to torpedo the ongoing negotiation. At that time, we announced that we are adamant to enrich uranium beyond 60%. This was a counteract following the attacks on Natanz and destruction of the centrifusion plant by the Israelis. At that time, we replaced the centrifusion devices with more powerful ones. Again, all was meant by the Israelis in order to undermine the ongoing negotiations with the United States. At that time, the Americans endorsed our measure. Over the past 2 days, we received the American message. They claim they are not going to get involved in the ongoing fight. Yet, we do not accept these statements. We have living proof that the Americans are providing assistance to the Israeli enemy. It was better for the Americans to speak out candidly rather than sending out false messages. I hope the American administration will step out and clear make their position clear. I hope the United States administration will condemn the Israeli attack on the nuclear facilities. And in order to prove their goodwill with respect to the nuclear facilities, the American administration should condemn the Israeli attacks on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities in order to steer themselves away from the battlefield. Once again, I reiterate, the international community must pay closer attention to this matter, to stand up to the crimes committed by the Zionist entity, as Israel has crossed all the red lines, all the international laws, norms, or practices. This is the best way to restore peace and stability in the region and the whole world. Thank you for your attendance and for listening. And I request the representatives of the media to leave, and if any of the diplomats and ambassadors are willing to raise any questions, I'm willing and prepared to answer.
Okay, let's talk to Dosa Jabari, our correspondent, about what we've just been hearing from the Iranian Foreign Minister. Dosa has a lot of experience working in Iran. So the Foreign Minister there making it very clear as far as he's concerned that the attacks that we're seeing going on by Israel are in direct relation to the ongoing nuclear discussions that have been happening between the US and Iran.
Yes, and Abbas Araghchi, first of all, this was his audience were ambassadors, foreign ambassadors that reside in Tehran. So he had an international audience of diplomats. And he said that it's very important for them to take his message back to their governments. This was first and foremost, and to ensure that Iran's message is relayed to the US government through them as well. He said that the attacks we're seeing now, first, they have not been condemned by the United States. He did say, interestingly, in the past 2 days, Iran has received direct messages through channels from the United States government reiterating that the US had no involvement in these attacks. And his response is, well, we basically don't believe that to be true, that Israel's actions would not have been possible without the United States green light. He said it is extremely important now, before things spiral and get out of control, diplomacy has to be applied. And it is up to the US government to step in and stop Israel from carrying out what he called were violations, blatant violations of international law. He said that, look, Israel has always been against Iran reaching any kind of an agreement with the United States and Western powers when it comes to its nuclear program. And Israel has done everything within its power since as early as 2006. There has been at least half a dozen nuclear scientists assassinated in Iran between 2010 and 2023. And he said, this is unacceptable. And as a result of these actions taken by Israel, Iran has chosen to advance its nuclear program in direct response to these threats. Therefore, we are here now with our nuclear program, and the United States and Iran were discussing a way to reach an agreement. We were on our way to a final agreement when Israel decided to launch these attacks, essentially using bombs to kill diplomacy. And that is what he's reiterating here. This is the first time we have seen any Iranian official speak live in Iran, other than the Supreme Leader delivering a message on Friday. He's the first one to appear in Vision and speak live from the capital, addressing the recent developments and situation. And he reiterated that there has to be international pressure put on Israel before we can see an end to this conflict.
One of the things, and you referred to it just a moment ago, was the fact that he did make a point of saying that as a result of the last Israeli attacks we saw when the talks were going on in Vienna back in 2024, it was as a result of that that Iran decided to increase its enrichment to 60%. And that was a significant jump from where it had been before. There are going to be concerns, aren't there, of course, that Iran, as a result of the attacks that Israel's been carried out, may choose to enrich further. And that would change the whole dynamic, not only, of course, in terms of the situation within the Gulf region, within the world, but also in terms of the nuclear negotiations and the leverage that that might give Iran.
Well, certainly. Look, Iran's nuclear program started out with about 3 to 4% enrichment capabilities in the early 2000s. And we saw them increase to 20% during the President Ahmadinejad era. And then from 20%, they went to 60%. And that jump was as a direct result, as the Foreign Minister Araghchi mentioned, of Israeli attacks on Natanz that was carried out. Not only did they advance the nuclear program as a result of the threats and attacks by Israel, they also took it underground. And the Natanz nuclear facility, which is the biggest of the 6 facilities in Iran, all of it was above ground, and it was exposed to these attacks by Israel. And after the attacks, over the past 2 years, they've decided to take most of it underground. So they are really looking towards ways to hide the nuclear program from plain sight, like the site in Fordow near Qom, that is also another facility that is enriching up to 60%. And it is these two facilities is where enrichment happens in Iran's nuclear program. That facility in Fordow is about 80 meters deep inside the mountains and underground. And the Iranians decided to do this in 2009 because they felt the threats from Israel were becoming more and more real. So they're saying, look, we are making sure our facilities are secure as a result of Israel. It doesn't have to be this way. Because the international community has been complacent in terms of reeling in Israel's actions, we are where we are right now.
Dorsa, thank you very much indeed for breaking that down. I know we're going to be talking to you over the coming hours. For now, Dorsa Jabari, thank you very much.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.